Fight fans, talk about Carl Cruz at MMA. Today, I am with undefeated mixed martial artist getting ready to make his PFL debut. Big card, April 11th in Chicago. He's taking on Sergio Pettis. He is Mr. Mitch Mckee. Mitch, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. You know, what a way to start off the year for you. Big announcement, taking on Sergio Pettis, a former champion, big name of the sport. First, let's talk about signing with the PFL. Obviously, you've been one of the top name prospects on the regional scene. A lot of people maybe thinking Contender Series, last minute UFC. We went the PFL route for you. What led you here?
Honestly, it's just, with them, you have a little bit more say in contracts and opponents and stuff like that. And I just feel like, with the new management executives coming in, I was just, it was a really exciting opportunity. And it just kind of just seemed to all fall in place and it worked out really well.
Absolutely. Last time out over in LFA, you took on No Bray. You were able to pick up a huge win there in the second round. Amazing finish. That'll be in your highlight reel forever, probably. Looking back at it, man, what did you make of the performance?
I thought it was good. I think, I got caught with the spinning elbow there and dropped, which, just to go through a little bit of adversity within the fight, I think was good just to prove to myself that even if things don't go exactly according to plan, you can still fight through it. And, because a lot of my other fights have been pretty clean, whether they're just dominant decisions or easy finishes, so I hadn't went through a lot of adversity. So being able to go through that and then come out and still get the knockout was pretty exciting.
You mentioned adversity in that fight, and I think for any MMA fighter, adversity is part of the journey. There's so many highs, there's so many lows. For you, do you feel that fighting is more mental than it is physical?
I mean, yeah, I think obviously you have to physically be ready to go in there. But yeah, I think a lot of it's just mental, like your preparation. You see a lot of fighters, even, at wherever you go, you see fighters that are world champions in the gym, and then they kind of freeze when they get out there and maybe tense up, and they don't look the same. I think that's obviously clearly just mental. And I think growing up, wrestling since I was 4 years old and competing my whole life in an individual sport like wrestling. And I was just actually talking to my wife earlier today about the fact that the first time I really had my most adversity was, or not adversity, but kind of fear and anxiety going into wrestling was when I made the state finals as an 8th grader. And it was at where the Minnesota Wild play, and it was just a huge arena, and there's all these people. And I remember just like walking out the tunnel and like crying and like so anxious and nervous, and then get done with the match, and I'm like, God, it wasn't really that bad. It's like you build things up in your head a lot more than they are a lot of times. And I think that's kind of, obviously it's the pressure of the situation, and some people let that pressure get to their head, and some people use it to elevate their performance.
You mentioned Minnesota. We're in a time now where there's quite a few guys from Minnesota out there competing in the big leagues. Obviously, Steven Asplin's out there. You got Tommy Peterson out there. You got Guzzi Hines, Angel Pacheco, yourself. What's it with the state of Minnesota and combat sports?
I think, if you go outside of Minneapolis, you got a lot of working class people in the country, and a lot of tough people that know how to put the work in and know how to go through the adversity like they have probably all of us have went through adversity in our life with some way or another. And I think you just grew up, just all you got to do is work hard and you'll get what you want. And so we all have that mindset.
So many people are watching mixed martial arts in this day and age. You have multiple promotions now. There are more fans than ever in it. Very few people understand what's it like to be a professional fighter. When you're battling it on the regional scene, you're not making Conor McGregor money. You're staying up late. You're waking up early. You don't know what's next. You don't know if you're going to make it to a big show or not. And even when you get there, every single sacrifice, they continue. For you, you've been given everything for a long time on this. Obviously, now you're one of the biggest promotions in the world. But what's made you stick through it?
That's definitely not talked about a lot, is just the regional scene grind, and you're not making amazing money, and you just got to stick with it and keep training. And I think, obviously the biggest thing for me was, especially living in South Florida where it's pretty expensive down here, was having my wife, right when I moved down here. She was my fiance at the time when we moved down here, and just having her support me and help, so financially I don't have to go get another job, because I think that's a big deal. If you're trying to work and train, it makes it 10 times harder, and it made it easy for me to be able to train twice a day and get the work that I need to get in and not have to worry about going to get another job. And so just having her support down here has been huge. And I think, and my mindset of just knowing that it's, when I first moved down here, just shifting my mindset that, you were up here in wrestling, now you're back down here on the totem pole, and you got to work your way back up that totem pole. So just having that mindset of always coming into training, looking to get better every single day, not worrying about what's coming this year. Am I going to make it to the big show this year or next year or next month? Just focusing on the day to day and getting better each day.
South Florida, really one of the hotbeds of martial arts in the United States. You train in one of the biggest gyms in the world over at Kill Cliff. Obviously, so many great fighters in there. You got Bisinger in there, Rainier DeRitter in there, Gilbert Burns, Chandler, Kamaru. We can go on and on with this. Robbie Lawler coaching. What led you to Kill Cliff?
It was actually Logan Storley wrestled at University of Minnesota. He was a 4-time All-American there. And while he was competing at Minnesota, I was in high school, and I lived outside of Minneapolis. I'd go in and train with the Gopher team. So got to know him a little bit when I was in high school. And then, after I finished college, and then I did the Olympic trials in 2021, and I got done with that, and he just gave me a phone call and was like, he actually just asked me why more D1 wrestlers don't fight. And because at that time in 2021, there wasn't a ton of D1 wrestlers fighting. And so he just asked me that question. And then I kind of was like, well, I would consider fighting. I mean, I've watched it since I was young. I just was so wrestling focused that I never, thought to go try it. But I've always watched all the big UFC pay-per-views and everything with my wrestling teams growing up in the winter when you're stuck, with the cold and snow outside in the middle of wrestling season. We'd all get together on the weekends and watch. So came down here for a couple weeks and tried it out, and then ended up moving down here like a couple months later.
Absolutely. Obviously, your wrestling is pretty amazing. You've shown it in all of your fights, a very high level. We're also seeing the hands. I think your last performance is very evident. You're turning into a very complete, well-rounded martial artist here at a very young age. Do you think we're going in the right direction? Has this been a goal, trying to get as complete as possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the goal. I think going back to what we were talking about, just the process of the regional scene and getting better. When I first moved down here, it's definitely a lot to take in with all the mixed martial arts, whether it's the boxing, the kickboxing, the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling. Like, each thing in itself is very hard to get good at. And so the first few years I was down here, it's just trying to get good at each one individually. And then the last couple of years has been trying to put all of them together as one martial art. So yeah, the last few years have been really fun because, once you getting the basics down and all the different disciplines is definitely the hard part. It's a very monotonous and doing the same drills over and over again, and just trying to get a basic 1, 2, 3, so it's good. And then after that, then you can start putting everything together, and that's when it starts getting fun, when you're working on the little details here, the little details there. And yeah, so I feel like over this last couple of years, I've gotten really good at putting everything together. So if we're going to be grappling, I can grapple with anyone out there. If we're going to be striking, I can strike with anyone out there, or I can do both. I think that's kind of the evolution of MMA now, is you have to be good at every area. So we really focused on that the last few years.
I think it's kind of really cool how these different promotions have each of the make fights. If you wanted to go the UFC route, most likely you'd be on the Contender Series, maybe a short notice. Well, here at the PFL, you kind of bypass all that, and you're going straight to a main event, straight with the guy that everyone who watches this sport knows. Were you a little surprised that you're getting Sergio right off the rip?
Yeah, well, so this last fall, I signed with PFL, but they had a different opponent for me this spring, and then Sergio's opponent, I don't know who he was supposed to fight, but I guess his opponent backed out. in like November. So then they asked me if I wanted to fight him, and I just said yes right away. And yeah, so I've known about it since like late October, early November-ish. So I've been training for it for a lot of months. It's obviously it just got announced like a month ago, but I've been focusing on this fight for about 5 months now, 4 or 5 months. So yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity that you can't say no to. So I feel like it's a great opportunity for me. It's exactly what I'm looking for. It's everyone's going to be hard to fight, no matter who you fight. So you might as well be fighting the number one contender at your weight.
Last year, I think one of the guys who really made a name of himself in the PFL was Mr. Thad Jean. Kind of went in there under the radar, left, ended the year, one of the big stars in the PFL. Do you feel like you have the opportunity this year to kind of have that story?
Yeah, I think exactly that. And I think that's another reason like this fight really enticed me too, because he's got such a big name in the MMA world that, by going and getting a win here in a month, I can kind of catapult myself off of his name and really make my name known at the bigger level. So that was a big part of it. And then, obviously he's the number one contender, so I'm looking to get a title fight later this year.
So overall, what do you think of Sergio as an opponent here?
Yeah, obviously he's really good. He's really talented. He's very experienced. Obviously he's got really good taekwondo on the feet. He's got pretty good jiu-jitsu from his back. But yeah, I mean, I think I'll be bigger, stronger. I just got to get to my positions, really wear on him, grind on him. And then obviously in the later rounds, just be mindful of his spinning stuff and not getting caught with something like that, like Magomedov did. So just staying sharp the whole 15 minutes and not being lazy at any moments or not kind of taking that little mental break ever. And I think I'll be able to grind him down and wear him down and get the W.
Do you think your wrestling ability really allows you to kind of like drive the fight when you're fighting flashy guys like this?
Yeah, I think it having the wrestling is nice because at any moment, you can always get it to your world by taking them down. Where you can't say the same about a striker, where if he's on the ground, he can't just get it back to his world on the feet. Obviously, it's harder to said than done. You can't just take the guy down just like that. You got to set it up a little bit. But I think as a wrestler, you can kind of dictate, where the fight's going to take place a lot more than a striker can dictate it against a wrestler. So, yeah, I think if I can just dictate where this fight's going to be played out and get to my spots that we've been working on, and I think that's where I can really get some damage off. We've been working on that on top, getting more damage off on top, and getting to my clinch stuff and really working on not just trying to cut off his game plan and his everything he's got on the feet. He's going to want to keep that distance, kind of counter off his back foot. And so I kind of have to, I don't want to play in that no man's land, just really either be in or be all the way out and get to my stuff.
We talked about before, obviously there's a lot of sacrifices that goes along with the mixed martial arts journey, but it's a roller coaster, man. There's highs, lows. One thing I love about the sport is that, I've had people on here tell me when they first began it, they're going down a bad path. They were getting in trouble. MMA provided them guidance, discipline, turning who they are today. For you, how have you grown involved from your time in martial arts?
Yeah, I mean, I think wrestling's a little different than MMA. It's, wrestling, you have your season, your sets, especially, college wrestling for sure. You have your set schedule every year, so you know exactly when you got to peak and what you have coming up. But it's also a lot, the grind is a little harder in wrestling because you're having to make weight every single weekend, sometimes twice a weekend for 3-4 months at a time in a row. But MMA is a little tougher sometimes because you have a lot of time where you're just training and you don't know when the next fight's coming up. So you got to just mentally be able to stay locked in and keep training hard like there is a fight coming up, even if you don't have one yet. But I think it's also just, for me at least, it's been fun just to kind of start something from the ground level again and really feel like I'm growing every single day. Because once you wrestle for 20 years, it's hard to feel that growth every day in practice. But now it's like every day I go in, I'm excited to go in because I know I'm going to learn something. And yeah, it's just really taught me to be patient with the process and just trust the process too. Because I mean, 10-0, but there's over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been times where I'm frustrated with the process, but you just got to keep trusting it, and you'll eventually get to where you need to be.
In addition to being a fighter, you're also a dad. What do you want your child to take away from this journey?
I think kind of what I just said, just trusting the process. As long as you're putting the right work in and you're working hard, everything will fall into place. I know, and there's days where from one day to the next, you could feel like everything's going not good, and then the next day you feel like everything's going great. You have one bad practice one day, and then the next day you have your best practice, and just the roller coaster of all that. Sometimes if you don't want to ride that roller coaster. You want to try to be the person that stays right in the middle. So just never let the highs get too high, lows get too low, and trusting the process, working hard, and you can really, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
A couple of years ago, if someone were to tell you you're going to be undefeated, PFL, first PFL fight, main event against Sergio Pettis, would have you believed it?
A couple years ago, yeah, probably not. I guess yes, because that's what I was working towards. But at that time, I was still a long ways from where I am now. But like I said, it goes back to I just kept putting my head down, kept working. Sometimes I'd have 5-6 months in between fights, but some people sit and don't do anything outside of fight camp, where I'm constantly still working on technique, trying to get better with my boxing coach, my jiu-jitsu coaches, Robbie. Just we're all still, that's kind of our time to really do our technical work, and then obviously then you turn it up a little bit in fight camp, and then bring it back down a week or two before the fight. But so it's that's the beauty about fighting is the work you put in that off time is what comes to light when you step in that cage.
One thing in my opinion that I think really separates you from some other guys, when you see the regional scene, when you see some of these top prospects, you look, there might be 10-0, 11-0, 12-0 guys, whatever it is, but you look at the record and sometimes you see these guys 11-0 fighting a 6-8, 11-0 fighting an 8-6. For you, you have tested yourself basically throughout the regional scene here. I mean, you're fighting 6-1 guys, 8-2 guys, 12-3 guys. The last guy that you fought had more than triple the amount of fights that you've had as a pro.
Yeah.
Knowing to do that, was that part of the strategy? Did you know to try to get to a point that you're at now, you need to test yourself by the toughest dudes possible?
Yeah, goes back, again, trusting the process. Like I trusted my manager, I trusted my coaches, and I trusted that they were going to feed me the right matchups at the right time. And, you don't want to, because you see it happen all the time where these guys have crazy good records and then they get to the big stage and they kind of get exposed by the guys up there. And so we needed to make sure we were testing ourselves, but also not taking too much on too early. So yeah, my first 4 or 5 fights were, easier opponents that maybe the records weren't as good, but then that's when we had to start incrementally getting better and better, getting tougher and tougher opponents to make sure that in a month here, when we take that jump, that we're ready for it.
For you, what's the ultimate goal of what you want to accomplish in the sport?
For me, it's the belt for sure. That's why taking this fight was a no-brainer for me and gets me that much closer. I get to kind of bypass probably a year or two of fighting just to get in that top 10, top 5. And then, for me also, it's just now that I have a family, it's just setting up my family and doing whatever I can to put some money away to make sure that my kids are good. So those are really the 2 things that I'm looking for. I've been thinking about it lately, like legacy, like what people consider to be, and I feel like legacy is just kind of, it's up to whatever you decide it is. And for me, my legacy is my kids. So obviously I'm trying to get that belt, and that's one of my biggest goals is to get the belt. But another big goal for me is just making sure that my family's all right.
You know, so many people are watching martial arts now from a casual perspective. And I think for the most part, people understand that you guys are going through the regional ranks, trying to get the bigger promotions to, win belts and more money and everything like that. But very few people, in my opinion, understand the fight outside of the fight. And to me, that's that fight not to have to clock in at 9 o'clock in the morning, clock out at 5. That's that fight to build financial freedom. That's that fight to live life on your own terms, not follow societal norms. For you,
Yeah.
has this been a big part of the journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to. I mean, I grew up in a wrestling family, and wrestling's, a little different. People get things a little bit more. Like my wife grew up. I wrestled with her older brother growing up, so she's been around combat sports her whole life too, so she gets it. But yeah, some people just don't understand, I guess, the sacrifice it takes and how many years you go without really getting anything back from it. And then that's when a lot of people tend to give up, is when they're not seeing anything for a few years and then they just give up. And it's hard to explain to like aunts and uncles and all that that don't have any idea or can't really comprehend it, that, just worked a 9 to 5 their whole life. So yeah, that's tough sometimes, but at the end, I guess you just have to find out when the process is complete.
Absolutely. All right, Mitch, last question for you, my friend. In a perfect world, what is the outcome April 11th when you make your PFL debut against Sergio Pettis?
For me, I plan on going in there and wearing him down, and I'm thinking third round TKO or knockout.
Absolutely. Well, Mitch, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Really excited to see the position you're in and can't wait for this fight, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. That's it for us, damn Carl Prusa. He is Mr. Mitchell McKee. You could watch him take it out Sergio Pettis April 11th, headlining PFL Chicago. You don't want to miss this one, fight fans. Take care.
Yep. Peace.